And hello everyone. Welcome to the ComicBase livestream. I'm your host, Pete Pickford. I am the creator of ComicBase, and we're going to be talking about lots of fun things today. Latest news in ComicBase, as well as answering your technical questions. If you have any, please post them to the chat down on YouTube. And also, we're going to be getting into non-fungible tokens. Whereas we tried to say in the Too Cute by Half promo for this thing, we're taking the fun out of non-fungible tokens because, we'll be talking about everything they are, everything they're hoping to be, and probably why maybe you want to not get involved with any of this at all, unless you want to. But anyway, we'll be getting into that in a bit. First of all, I hope sounds okay for everyone out there. Levels looked okay ahead of time. But also, if you have a moment, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down there on the chat. And that helps get the messages distributed out to the rest of the subscribers and things like that, because there's an algorithm and no one really knows how it works. But apparently hitting like and subscribe helps quite a bit, as we've seen before. All right, well, hey, let's do a quick around the horn here. Let me hide some menus here so I can see what I'm doing. All right. Andre says, "Hey everyone! The new release of his comic cover catalog out from May is out there. He's linking in the forum post. Give that a shot. It's insane. It's basically he's taken all the covers that are in the archive edition, thrown them into a PDF book, and it's, if you guys remember the Gerber guides of comic book covers, it's like that brought into the digital age and just made crazy with just how big the dang thing is. But anyway, give that a look, and hopefully you guys will enjoy that. Mike reminds us, yes, it is Cinco de Mayo indeed, and we know this because all the cops are out, getting ready to bust drunk drivers tonight, because that's how we roll out here in Tennessee. Other than that, yeah, hope you guys are doing well, and Taco Wednesday. I don't freaking know. Whatever you guys do to celebrate in your own way. Mike says, want to give kudos to the ComicBase team. Have 3 monitors ranging from SVGA and HDMI on both sides, 4K for the main, and the screensaver works excellent on all 3. Thank you. We actually try that. We have a similar setup over here, and you'll never believe how much grief it is to get the screen resolutions to work, but we definitely try, and we think it's pretty cool. All right. Oh yes, and Revenge of the 5th. Yes, because yesterday was May the 4th, and so now it's Revenge of the 5th. Thank you, Gregory, for that. Hail to Xanadu Comics. Atomic Avenue sales still going strong. Even sold some amazing heroes from the magazines. Nice to see that, and we're looking forward to seeing more magazine sales rolling through the system. I got a crazy huge order just last night for like 117 items. Put the box together today. I had to run it down to UPS. It was like this big, but Atomic Avenue seems like it's rolling pretty good. And let's see here. Doug Wren made corrections to Journey into Mystery Canadian Edition the other day. Wonder if you're rational for giving its own title instead of a variant. Yeah, so variants have to exist in the database before we can use them ahead of time. So we can't just, you guys can just free roll a variant like Canadian Edition anytime you want in your own copies, but for us to put it into the master database, it has to be something you guys already had, which is why we kind of pre-populated the variants A through Z before we were ever going to use them. And in the early days of things for variants, we had things like platinum editions and silver editions and things like that before it just got to be too much. It's hard for us, though, to put a brand new variant out in the world, because what happens when people download the update is it becomes its own thing with an unknown type. It's the same reason I had to ask you when you posted it, what's the CE for? Creators Edition? It turns out it was for Canadian Edition. So yeah, it's hard for us to do roll your own variant types of things like that. A couple things. Now that's why we didn't do a variant of that. Now then the question becomes, why didn't we do this as the A cover for Journey into Mystery? And that's a pretty good question. We could have gone that way. There was some discussion with the editorial staff about that. Do like Canadian price variants belong as A covers, B covers, and so forth? We did a bunch of that stuff in Captain America. I think it mostly came down to not knowing how many of these exist in the world. If there was a whole run of Canadian distributed Journey into Mysteries, then that makes sense as its own title, just to separate it out and give it a clearer presence in the database. If it's one of these things where they tried test distributing it out to Canada for a limited portion of the run, or they gave it different markings for a limited portion of the run in Canada, then that, I think, works better as a variant. But in the end, some of the stuff becomes judgment calls, and it's something that I guess the editors decide to spin out into its own title on. That's my take on that one, mostly because I remember I had to go around with the editors and say, what's the CE thing? Because when Mark was out last week and I was covering for him, I was handling a lot of the content in a way I don't normally get into, and so I had to handle all the devilish details of this kind of stuff in a way that Mark has to do on an everyday basis, but it was new to me, so there's that. All right. Let's see here. Excellent. Okay, sounds like the sound is good. All right. Let's see. Greg says, every week the master database update list changed comic book titles, and it seems like some titles end up in that part of the list every week. Possibly. Basically, it's a change if you're looking at the update report in ComicBase, you see a change in the comic title whenever anything about it changes. It could be the copyright line, it could be the description, it could be the years published, and or the periodicity for magazines. So for some reason, I noticed when I was editing corrections this last week that for some reason people were submitting magazines as if they came out daily, and it was driving me crazy accepting the corrections because it kept on having to switch the periodicity back to monthly and so forth. But anyway, anytime any of that stuff changes, then it comes out as a change to your databases, and it becomes part of the title report. And every once in a while, we might someone might say this thing ran from 2019 to 2020, and then the next guy might say 2019 to present, which still kind of correct, so forth. Little things like that are also enough to cause a change, and so depending on what we accept, and some of this becomes stylistic, you might see it listed as a change report every week because something in a way did change about it, but it's really frickin' minor, so you're probably never gonna know. All right, so as far as why Atom Age Combat is doing it this, one thing or another, we'd have to look into the exact logs to answer that with any kind of, greater emphasis. All right. Yes, and hard for ComicBase to put out a new variant in the world, but apparently not too hard for the publishers. Yes, that is absolutely true. No, at least we handle the variants better than we used to. It used to be, if you guys remember ComicBase from a couple of years ago, anytime, like at some point, I remember we had only had variants up to like Q or R or something like that, and someone had come up with some crazy comic book that had the 23rd variant or something, and so we had to add another letter to the whole thing. And it when you downloaded that update, everyone got the pause and say, "What's this U variant?" With it that's coming down the update, and you had to hit an OK to accept it as a new variant and so forth. At least we handle it better than that, but it comes up as kind of a generic-y variant. Like had we gone ahead and put in a CE as a variant type, it would have come up literally as a CE variant, and no one would know what it really meant. So we try not to add new variants to the world if we possibly can get away with it. But there's a discussion for another time of what do we do for the. At this point, there's about 24 titles that have come up with so many variants for their issues that you actually exceed the 26 variants that you can do easily with just variants A through Z. We've been abusing the printing field for those, but it's not ideal. And there's probably a deep and systemic discussion to say, like, well, if people keep doing this sort of thing where they're putting out hundreds of store variants, is there a better way of dealing with it? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, because the whole idea of an issue number is pretty key to the soul of a comic listing, and it's hard to add new things onto it or to extend it easily without causing all sorts of chaos. So, it's a discussion for another time. We got enough on our plates for this discussion. Trust me. All right, so. That was the quick round of chat. I will check this periodically as we go through the show. All right, so other things that I'd like to talk about just at the top of the show. While I was editing books this last week and helping out with that, we got just a ton of new photo submissions in particular. We got a ton of submissions of all sorts, but we got over 13,000 pictures posted in the list last week alone, to the extent that I actually put out a early week update just to kind of start getting some of the stuff out there into the world so that it didn't overwhelm everybody. But yes, if you're downloading pictures this last week and it goes for a while, if you've got an archive edition downloading everything, you will see that there are improved pictures from everything from 50 years of Time and Life magazine and popular popular mechanics from the 1800s, and just crazy amounts of stuff, even People magazine. It's really neat, and that and this is actually something I really kind of hope the magazine category would turn into. And let me flip over to the screen, for instance, is that I'm just watching these pictures all come in. And so let's dial the Wayback Machine here to say 1939. Nothing much happening in 1939, right? So you've got Captain of Champions. I guess the Olympics had just been played. Oh yes, they were talking about the problematic Olympics that had been going on there. You've got the Queens are there. Girls' new fobs. The fall fashions. Here's the swimsuit issue from 1939, and then some things started popping up on the horizon, in terms of different things going on in the popular life. We have everyday covers, and then starting in about, the end of 1939, you're about to see a non-stop procession of nothing but generals, warships, soldiers, and grimness as basically the world went to war. And it's funny because you can actually see this through the lens of everything from so here we're up to 1940, 1941. Let's bounce a year later on. So here's the start of 1941. Also you got your odd color cover in there, but you can see that even though the U.S. hadn't entered the war yet, this is still months before Pearl Harbor, we were thinking about what's happening over in Europe and worrying about it. Still, the odd baseball cover, here's, Brazilian singers and things like that. But starting in about December here, December 6th, 1941, day that will live in infamy, December 7th, I believe. For about the next 5 years, all you're going to see is covers of wartime things, waves, wax, people, staffing up at home. That's, I think, the one pop culture thing we have going on there, for about 2 years running. But yeah, it's funny because you can see this stuff happening and just see how America was looking at the wartime years, just from the absolute grimness of the 1942 to later on when you get to later in the 40s. We were starting to make progress over in Europe. There was very much a need to celebrate our allies, the Russians, at that point, because they were the ones helping march into Berlin as things rolled on, and we started actually rolling up some victories against the Axis forces and so forth. But yeah, it was not until 1945 late that you really see a return to pop culture and things that had anything other to do than mobilizing and getting this whole thing won. And then suddenly, you've got the odd shot of people on the beaches, swimming, still some more generals. But now, look, we have foreign travel. We have, people coming home. Look, picture of just your dog, right? And you see America getting back to life again as, people started returning to normal. It's really interesting seeing that through the eyes of, say, like, Life magazine, which has the very much known for the big photojournalism, but then you also can see more of a pop culture aspect of it in Time. And if you really want to see a pop culture treatment of things, People magazine didn't come along until the 70s or everything, but it's really interesting to see even how entertainment and celebrity culture changed from, like, say, the 70s through today. You went from people being very worried about what's the influence of All in the Family, and is that too much for TV, and then suddenly you're talking about the Kardashians and everything else like that. It's really interesting seeing the culture change over that kind of spectrum. So even if you look at my the span of, like, your own life and see how these different lenses viewed the whole thing, it's just it's neat, and I don't think anything really captures it the way that looking through just decades of magazine covers do. I would love it, love it if we could fill in some of the other ones that were key to my life. When you think about things like Rolling Stone or Spin Magazine, Musician Magazine, and so forth, because again, it's just neat seeing these cultural trends play out, and then obviously it's kind of neat when you buy and sell them as well. So that is the big deal on the content end for the last bit. Steve says, when doing the early week updates, is there a way to notify us about them? It's a good point. Honestly, I was kind of hoping to sneak them out. Generally check on Thursday and Friday. You're not going to miss the picture downloads if they're less than a week, because they wind up being cumulative. So the way we stage pictures is, if basically we will, in any given update, we will pull all the pictures that were posted in the last seven days. So if we do put out an update on a Tuesday, it's going to get all the things that were in the previous week's update, unless you already had them, in which case it won't try to download them twice. It'll give you all the new things, but it does a big check first of all and says, do you need to pull down this picture? So I just want to get the train rolling ahead of time. So you won't miss anything if you just wait till Thursday to get the pictures, but if you did happen to grab them early, then it's a little less load on our server. So that's what my thinking was on the whole thing. Plus, we were processing just so darn many corrections and additions this week. Like, I just wanted to... I like seeing the update kind of coalesce a bit before it becomes out there in the world where everyone's got it. So I wanted to get a little jump on that. That was, for better or worse, that was my thinking on that. All right, let's see here. Andre says, have a problem with my 3 databases with Sidekick does the update manually. The HTML reports the same database. I did check the ID and they're all different. Contact us via tech support. We can follow up on that. It should work just fine. The update reports are individual to the individual databases, but let's follow up with you and check some versions out and do some things like that. Support at comicbase.com. We'll be happy to follow up with you. All right, other things that are happening this week. I did put out also a slight update to the program itself. We're up to version 20.0.2.1777, so the year after we declared independence. I think at the end of 77, was it Christmas of 77 where we did Valley Forge? I can't remember, but 77 was not a great year for the Revolution, Army of Independence, or George Washington's forces, and in the American Revolution. It didn't start getting good for American forces. 77 was basically about when all the initial rush of, hey, let's be in our own country, was starting to give away to the, hey, this is going really badly, and all the fights against the Brits, because it was just losing battle after battle after battle. And then obviously we turned that around in the end. But sorry, I'm in history mode today. So, but yeah, 1777 is how I'm remembering which update we're on right now, and we pushed that a few minutes before we went live. Things that are new in that version. One is we're a little bit more aggressive about sizing down a few of the preference screens for custom fields, just to make things fit on smaller monitors. I noticed that we were doing remote sessions with certain customers that have screen expanders on or running different display resolutions on, especially on laptops, that the forms are getting very, very tight. The print dialog, I know, is still very tight for folks. It has to be. There's just so much going on there. But if you are running on the absolute minimum laptop you can buy today, it does help a lot if you're having a hard time getting the print dialog on there. If you set your taskbar to auto hide, that's about the only tip I can give on that one right now. But I do think if we went back and we found a way to tighten up a couple of these screens a little bit more, buy 20 pixels off of them, I think I would see if we couldn't squeeze a little something out of the print dialog, because I did notice when I was helping out some folks in this last week that that's hard if you buy a low-end laptop to get the program on there. It's below minimum specs for the program, but it's still a configuration that a lot of people out there in the world have. So I respect that. But other things that this new version did is it does a little bit of note scrubbing. So if you go to your file menu and you go to File Tools, and let me go ahead and show that. Go right over here to File, File Tools, bring it over to the right screen, and say rebuild lists. If you then click on item information, what this will do is it will do a better job now of scrubbing through all the information in the notes field to try to standardize the way that certain notes appear, to get rid of redundant information. So if you say things like reg cover, and then somebody else comes around later on and says regular cover, instead of having two listings for the same thing, it will it becomes one thing. It just says regular cover. Instead of saying 1: Spider-Man, it'll say first appearance of Spider-Man, and it won't stack that up with somebody else who had said 1: Spider-Man. But anyway, so go ahead, and I would definitely suggest everyone go out, take a moment, go to File, File Tools, Rebuild Lists, and go through and let it do some cleanup on your item information. And it doesn't hurt to immediately also check off the, once you've done that, clear clean up your list of contributors, storylines, and notes, because to the extent that it's talking about things like the first appearances or origins of different characters, it will speed up your search a little bit if it gets a chance to recompute those after it's done any kind of cleaning up work. All right, so that is that. Those are the major changes this time out. I did notice there are folks out there, because for some reason we're getting a big shift of folks coming in from older versions. Happened in the last couple weeks. It would definitely help if you guys at least at some point in time went and did that same scrub of item information and so forth, because we are seeing on the back end the report processor is having to do a little bit more cleanup than usual, dealing with out of format dates and things like that. So if you guys could clean up your own data before you send it to us, that would be great, because then our back end stuff has to do a little less work. Also, it integrates better with the online, the mobile app, for folks who are using the new mobile app to do your stuff in there. If you've been posting your data and you haven't seen it immediately appear in the mobile app, one thing you can definitely do to help us out is do a rebuild list of your item information just at least once, and make sure you get, because one of the other things it does is that causes it to validate all these fields and make sure that the data falls into the expected values. It gets rid of some food that might jam us up on the back end. So if you would do that, we would appreciate it. All right. So, I think let's do a quick check of the chat, and then let's get into NFTs. All right. John P. says, are the picture.zip downloads updated? Yes, they are, and yes, sorry, the download pages say they updated on 2020-11-25. Yeah, when we update new images to the servers, there's a separate task we have to do to update the records you guys see when you're browsing them on the web pages, and it doesn't look like we did that, so we'll update the data. So the actual data is, if you actually look at it or download, you'll see it's created at the end of April. So those are the new ones. And Greg says, any chance we get an afterword field for books? We have an introduction, preface, and forward, but not afterword. We thought about that. The thing that formed our thinking on books very much was, what are the supported fields in the Amazon data records? And afterword, for whatever reason, was not one of them. It was, I remember having a bit of debate about this at the time. These are the fields that the Amazon data records track when they're talking about their own extracts. Amazon has an API. We don't draw on it, but we wanted to, at least thinking ahead to the future, if we ever were in a position where we wanted to interface with Amazon, it wouldn't hurt us if we kind of started lining up our vision with where they are at right now. And so that's why we chose some of the fields that we chose. They track artist, editor, cover artist, forward, intro, preface, adapted by, and translator. They do not have afterward. I could see adding afterward. It's not a bad suggestion. Greg, if you could do me a favor, if you could just send me a quick note on that, either on Slack or post to the forums, just to remind me so I don't lose it on the feature request list for next time out. That's something. Yeah, I don't think that's a ridiculous request. And honestly, if we had a field that Amazon didn't have, well, that just means that that's a field that they don't have that we do. So, yeah, it doesn't hurt us any. If they have fields that we do that they have that we don't have them, if we ever did do an interface with them, then there's potential issue there, but having extra stuff isn't necessarily a problem. Okay. Okay, and let's see. Andre said, and yes, I told Pete to add a date on the release so we can track them. Apparently, don't want to do it. Date on the release. We have dates on our releases. We just don't have dates on the releases of the pictures, unless we think to do them up top. Sorry, that's all me. We didn't mean anything by it. That's just me not thinking to edit the metadata as we posted it. Okay. All right, let's see here. So great. The thing I want to say for forum posting is, if you post to the forums, the main thing in general is it does one of two things for us. It lets us know, first of all, if a lot of people say, oh man, afterward, yeah, why didn't you do that a million years ago? We're so excited about that. We really want to see it. Then it moves it way up the priority list for us. Whereas if someone says, hey, I'd like an afterward thing, and it's crickets, then it's like, it becomes more of a, well, if we get around to it, kind of thing. But if someone suggests a feature and there's just thunderous, clamoring for it, then it definitely gets our attention as far as knowing where we should focus our efforts. Because we have a list, of things that are on the docket for like our next releases, and we're always trying to balance limited resources with what can we get into the next one, and if we see something has traction, it moves up. But the other thing it does is it makes it so it takes it out of the realm of like show conversations. Like if you guys ever gone to Comic-Con or things like that, you wind up talking to 500 people over the space of 5 days, and you are listening to every single word that they're saying, and you are thinking about it as you're going, everything else, and you really mean, it's like, wow, that's a great idea, I really want to get around to that, and you really mean it when you say it. And by the time you've had 400 other conversations, you barely remember your own name. And so it's like the reason that you, if you ever get a business card from someone at a trade show, one of the best things you can ever do, first of all, is number one, get a card, because it reminds you, oh, I talked to this person, but also write yourself a tiny little note at the bottom, as soon as you get out of their site, and say like, okay, this was the guy who wanted to talk to us about, adding this feature or something, just so you remember what the deal was, and then you've got a physical artifact that reminds you, oh, right, that thing. Because other than that, it's way too easy just to get blitzed out of having memory of things like this. So those are my tips on how to hack staff at comic conventions and so forth. But yes, I do want to capture the ideas that people come by with, because I hate being the guy who says like, oh yeah, someone suggested that about 5 years ago, and that was a great idea, and then the person says, yeah, that was me, you schmuck. Yeah, I don't want to be that guy, but I do get overwhelmed, and so does everyone else. So anyway, that's what we're saying. All right, so all right, let's talk NFTs. So let's go to the video here. Well, first of all, so all right, so let's get Wizards' side of things before we get rolling, and I think we can play this without getting copyright struck. So this is Wizards' take on NFTs.
Since the dawn of time, humans have been bound by the limited nature of physical ownership. Well, no more. From the far horizons of the unknown, we now possess new technology from the future. We have enabled your relics to travel with you through the metaverse, where you will live in 1,000,000 could-be years in 1,000 maybe worlds. Presenting Wizard World NFT.
All right, well, that explained nothing at all, which is about what I expected. What the F is an NFT? All right, so an NFT is what it's called, a non-fungible token. What it is it's, think of it as a signed, numbered print of whatever it is that they're giving it to you for, and it could be anything. Ideally, it's something that has a digital nature to itself. For instance, like, if we wanted to right now, we could all start making. I could make an NFT out of any digital experience, including this live stream right now. If on the count of three, I said, all right, everyone, hit the print screen key. On 3, 2, 1, click. Everyone at that point will have a screenshot of YouTube with my mug on it, talking about NFTs. Now, all of you, if you cropped it down so everyone's got the same YouTube video, the whole window of the whole thing, everyone's basically at the exact same image. But I, as the owner of the image, can say things like, well, only one of those images, the ones that are identical, the one that, frankly, because I'm not capturing it myself right now, I could have one of you guys send me your copy, send it over to me, because it's a digital file. It's identical, right? But I can bless one of those and say, okay, yeah, this is the original, or this is the official one, because original has no meaning whatsoever when you're talking about digital stuff. Because, I mean, literally, when I'm copying a file, I make an exact digital copy of that file. There is no original. But what I can do is I can bless one of them. And the way I bless it is I do a process called minting. All that means is I've teamed up with one of the cryptocurrency guys on one of their blockchains, which is basically just a big, long ledger of people who have ever owned an asset. Most of the time it's an Ethereum coin or a Bitcoin or something like that. But here's the list of the coin and everyone who is entitled to use that coin or any portion of it, and all the transactions they've ever done with it, and all these things are cryptographically signed in a very intensive way to make sure that no one can just alter or add things to the ledger or manipulate it in any possible way. That ledger it's publicly known, but nobody can change it, unless it's official. Anyway, I can do is I can add my copy of this thing we're doing right now, right? We're making, we're making an NFT out of this performance right now. I can take my copy, I can sign it, I can submit it to a marketplace, and have them add it to the blockchain, or at least the token which represents it, which is going to be a long hexadecimal number. That's all it really becomes in the end. But it's a long hexadecimal number tied to my number, and added to the ledger in such and such a way that it is absolutely known to be my number, and no one else can have added it. You couldn't add the same number and have it work. And then at that point, I've created something unique. I've created the official ownership of that frame of video that we all took the picture of. So I'm now going to go and push my luck one step further. I'm going to say, okay, now that I've made the official copy of that screenshot of me talking about NFTs, I'm going to go and I'm going to put it on a marketplace. I'm going to let you buy it. You say, like, wow, I'm going to buy a screenshot. That's a fantastic idea, Bickford. Why didn't I think of that? And indeed, you could ask that question pretty validly. But anyway, there could be bidding. You could, be the lucky winner at the end of the day. You could pay, a little money, a lot of money, who knows? But at the end of the day, you would have received a token, a non-fungible token, which means, and fungible is one of those wonderful words. It's the word, I'll get to that one in a minute, but fungible means you can't transmute it into something else. It's locked forever. I can't trade it. I can't. I can give it to you. I can sell it to you, but I can't. I can't make a copy and have you use it without me giving up my part of it. I have to transfer it to you in some way. I can't just transmute it. So anyway, you're really going to own that thing, which indicates that you're the official owner of whatever that digital asset is that created, that picture of me right here. And then you'll have paid me some money, and then that's it. That's all you got. You are the official guy who owns it. Now, a lot of people would look at that and say, what the living hell? Why would I pay money for that? If I wanted a picture of Bickford, I could be taking infinity screenshots of him at this very moment. For that matter, let's say I want to take a picture of something useful, like, I don't know, the Mona Lisa, right? I've got a digital print of the Mona Lisa. I've got a digital print of that, the London Calling cover that Penny Smith took, with dude from The Clash, smashing his guitar. Having the rights to that digital art, that sounds like a better starting place than a picture of Bickford. And indeed, it might be. Penny Smith could sell you an NFT, entitling you, says, I am the official guy who owns the NFT to the guy smashing his guitar on the London Calling cover, and you might pay a lot of money for that. But what did that get you exactly? Does it mean that you've got a poster of that thing to put on your wall? No. Does it mean that you even got the rights to use the image? I mean, can you then take that image and make it the cover of your next album? No, you didn't get anything of the sort. They gave you nothing with that. Literally, the only thing they gave you with the purchase of that NFT is the ability to say, in a digitally secure way, no, I'm really the official guy who bought the rights to say, I bought this thing. That is literally the only thing they gave you. They didn't give you any usage rights. They didn't give you any physical assets. They didn't give you anything at all. They gave you the official bragging rights. Now, you can sell NFTs which come with other things. You can sell NFTs that come with, any number of tchotchkes and, really nice acrylic cases to display, the thing in. I mean, you could do any number of one of those things, but no one's required to do it. The only thing that's for sure given, unless they throw it in there, is, again, the bragging rights. But that being said, now we get into the really strange part. And say, like, I can see why no one would ever want to buy something that all it amounts to is bragging rights. And yet, people are doing exactly that. Let's have a look at this one here, for instance. A lot of you guys will recognize this image. This is Jack Dorsey saying, just setting up my Twitter. Posted on May 21st at 2006. This is the first tweet that was ever tweeted. Jack decided, I'm going to set up an NFT for the bragging rights to say that you have the NFT for my first Twitter. Now, again, you don't get my Twitter. It isn't like I have to take it off my servers and give it to you. You got nothing with it. You got the bragging rights. That's all you got. And a Malaysian guy who, strangely enough, is also involved in cryptocurrency, bought this one and paid $2.9 million for it. And he considers himself very lucky to have done it. And if he wants to, he can then resell the bragging rights for the first tweet and maybe make more. That's a thing. Here's another one. There is a artist called Unhomed. I'm going to use art very loosely on this one. This is, I know it looks very big, but this is actually just a single pixel. He had a collection of digital primary. This is R, that's for red. There's surprisingly also a G for green and B for blue. This one sold for 500 crore, which is a currency, which apparently amounted to $895,715 at the time of sale, for the rights to say I bought a pixel. That's it. That's all he got. So yeah, this is a real thing. People really did this. Now, more prosaically, you have things like this. There's various sites where you can buy NFTs. This one, I believe, I shame myself because I've forgotten the name of this amazing piece of art. But it's basically a picture of Daft Punk that somebody drew on their, tablet. It's not bad. It's got some, neat sparkly stuff going on there. I kind of dig it a little bit. And this NFT came with, nothing. It's honestly, I got the same thing. You right now are getting the same thing you get if you bought the NFT off the exchange, except the guy who bought off the exchange for the low price of like 0.02 Ethereum, which wound up being like about $30 or whatever at the time it was sold, got the rights to say, like, I've got the only official copy. All you other guys have mere digital imitations of my official copy. And they have, if you go to some of these sites, let me see if I can pull one up here. There's one called Rareable. They have a variety of bitchin' things you can buy on these sites. So here is Rareable with chatbots. And, let's have a look at this one here. This one is B15 Oler, or I think it's Bisolar or whatever it is. And it's a little GIF animation. It's pretty cool, the things fall onto it, they pop off and so forth. And right now the bidding on this one is going for, let's see. Only 10% of the sales go to the creator on this one. So the creator's kind of getting ripped off on this one. I guess the rest of it's going to maybe charity, maybe it's going to, somebody else. I don't really know on the whole thing. But at the moment, this thing is going for 0.09 Ethereum. Ethereum is a cryptocurrency which I believe as of a couple minutes ago, let me check my Coinbase account on this one. Let's pop it into screen on screen so I can see what that's going for. Coinbase. Ethereum at the moment is going for $3,429.98. And by the way, if you guys need a currency in your life, or if you guys need an investment vehicle in your life that makes, I don't know, doing lines of coke off of, hookers' butts and running from the mob, in a hail of gunfire, that makes that look tame, can I suggest cryptocurrency? Because I mean, like, if the running from the mob thing isn't enough excitement in your life, if base jumping off of skyscrapers and firing rocket launchers into terrorist camps if that isn't enough fun for you, yeah, crypto is just I'd say take some large portion of your money, throw it into cryptocurrency, and then have a look at the daily spread on the pricing on this thing. Let me see if the camera can capture this. I may have to pull it up, but here, let's do this. I can do this on a website. That would be the intelligent way to go. Let's go to Coinbase. And let's have a look at the... okay, yeah, we can pull up things like this. So here's Ethereum on Coinbase. I don't want to create an account on this right now. I just want you to tell me the damn thing. Okay, I'm gonna have to wave. I'm gonna have to wave it in front of the camera. Apologize for this, guys. Is this? No, is it gonna autofocus? Oh, it did. Unbelievable. All right, guys. This is the intraday. All this happened today. If you can see the volatility on Ethereum today. So at, I don't know, it's about 8 in the morning. It's going for $3,200.33. By about, I don't know, 40 minutes before showtime, it's going for $3,500. This is how much it can change in an hour. Come on, focus. You can do it. You can do it. Coming, trying. Maybe it can't. Anyway, but this is, hopefully you get an idea for the curve. That's in an hour. Bitcoin, the big daddy in the entire player right now. Bitcoin had a 4.5% swing day over day. Hour over hours, like since we started this show. It started the show at 56.5K. It peaked somewhere around the intro, around a little north of $57,000, and it's been a slide ever since. So all I can think is that I'm clearly affecting the price of Bitcoin as I talk. Anyway, yeah, if you need some real excitement in your life, getting into cryptocurrency is definitely a way to do it, because you literally are talking on a second-by-second basis of swings in magnitude of price that are just insane by the list of any other financial instruments. That said, why would you want to get into them? Well, let's back out and let's have a look at. I'm gonna need this thing to focus. Come on, you can do it, camera. Here, I know how to do this. All right, we're gonna autofocus in. That worked. Okay, so if that is the hourly, and that is the daily. Here's the weekly. Okay, that's a little up and down. Let's have a look. I'm going to switch to Ethereum on this one, because Ethereum had a really interesting story. Here's the daily on Ethereum. Here's the week in Ethereum. The week started at $2,600 for Ethereum. It's at $3,500 today. This is the month in Ethereum. The month started at 1900, capping up at 3500. So in a month, we're literally talking about over the course of a month, swinging by basically 100%. And over the course of a year, and this is really why people hate this stuff, this is the year graph for Ethereum. From $176.43 to $3,500. And that's the number 2 cryptocurrency, Bitcoin being the number 1. These kind of swings are just absolutely insane. You've never seen anything like it. But it's like one of those things where, like, if you had actually thought, hey, I've got a great idea. I'm going to pour $10,000 of my money into this weird funny money stuff. And you had done that, say, at the start of the pandemic. Like, if you had bought Bitcoin a year ago, let me swap that one here. Bitcoin 1 year ago. Bitcoin 1 year ago was going for $8,000, going for $65,000 as of like the day before yesterday. Yeah, no, I mean, this is insanity, and this again, that's the overall curve. Okay, so why, dear God, why would you do anything like all this? Why would you buy a non-fungible token? Why would you buy Bitcoin? I mean, this stuff is literally based on it, what you're buying is an impossible to fake hexadecimal number, which is tied to you in a way that's very, very secure. But basically, all you're talking about is you're buying a hexadecimal number. Why would you do this? And why would you pour real money into something like this? And the answer is because, like any other fiat currency these days, its value is entirely based on what do people think it's worth. I mean, its value is not based on anything in our world. It's based entirely on the faith of people saying, I would take some of that in order to buy something I want. Once upon a time, there was a time when you could go in America and you could take a gold piece out and you could take it down to the treasury and they would give you 25 US dollars for it, and you could take it 25 US dollars and they would give you a gold piece. You would actually have a physical thing that was guaranteed to be stacked against your money. Same thing goes with silver. That has not been true for a very long time. Not since the 70s at the far end of things, not since the 30s on the early end of things. By the 70s, it was completely decoupled from the gold standard in terms of the value of the US dollar. So, I have some currency here as well. All right, so here's a dollar, right? That's US dollar. It's a small piece of paper. It's about 5 inches long, 2 inches tall, give or take. Comes in different colors. Here's one with a picture of a different dude on it. It's got a 20 on it. This one is, in theory, even though it's the same size, worth 20 of these guys here. And if I want to, I can take 4 of these guys over here, trade it for a bigger piece of paper right over here, which is a bunch of paper that which, God help us, I hope someday not only to read and enjoy, but to at some point stick on something like a Atomic Avenue and sell for $5. Why do we do any of this stuff? Honestly, it's based entirely on the idea that somebody else is going to think it's worth the money. It's worth whatever I'm using to trade it with. I guess the story goes is that the first Bitcoin was used to buy a couple of large pizzas, or something close to that. The first fiat dollar, which is the first dollar, which is a dollar that, because the U.S. government said it's worth that, it's no longer worth what, the same dollar in 1972 or so, when we left the gold standard. I believe, if I were to look at the inflation index from those days, it's worth, that 1972 dollar would be worth about 5 or 6 of today's dollars. But why? It's the same piece of paper, right? It's the same share of government. And the answer is because the U.S. has increased the monetary supply by so much in that time that we require more of these to buy the same amount of stuff that we wanted for it in 1972. So even talking about these pieces of paper. Now, the piece of paper by itself has no actual worth. The reason we believe it is because it's backed by, as they say, the full faith and credit of the United States government. But at a certain point, the U.S. government has found ways to inject so much extra dollars into the economy while not creating new goods to back them with, that you get a thing called inflation that makes it so that each dollar is worth quite a bit less than the dollar before it. if you guys have been watching it's called the M1, the M2, and M3 supplies, the various monetary supply measures over the last couple 3 years, it has been absolutely terrifying. I didn't have enough time before the show to pull up the graph, but I promise I will dig them up and add them to the show notes. But we've basically invented $10 trillion in the U.S. economy. In the U.S. economy, I believe the entire gross domestic product of the United States economy is worth about $14 trillion. Now, I'm not sure if that's the post or or the after shutdown number, but it's a number like 14. It might be 16, it might be 12 and a half, but it's in that range. We have essentially invented a whole year worth of economic output out of nothing. We just we basically issued the bonds from the government to ourselves. We bought our own bonds. We bought our own promises. Those then got pushed through the central banks. They became securities that then get pushed through the later banks. They become collateralized securities, and then that becomes money. That becomes the kind of thing that's in our wallet. But in the end of the day, we didn't create new houses, we didn't create new buildings, we didn't create new things of value to back any of that with, which is why we're seeing such incredible inflation in the prices of real things. You guys are seeing it if you see the price of oil go up, what you're seeing is people who are holding real things, the real oil, are saying, I want more of that paper stuff you've got over there for me to give you the same gallon of oil, which is why the $3 gallon, depending on where you live, the $2 gallon of oil you bought, or a gallon of gas you had at the beginning of last summer is now the $3 or $3.50 gallon of gas at the start of this summer. It's the same gallon of gas, right? The thing that lost the value was the dollar. So we are in a world like this where, again, everything is worth only the value you put on it. And, you have official currencies, things like, those dollars that are in your wallet, which are backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government or the European Parliament or whatever else. But all those guys are busy inflating their own currencies as much as they can in order to finance the things they would like to spend money on in a way that they don't actually have to pay for right away. They pay for it by devaluing effectively any savings you have that's denominated in dollars. If your savings are denominated in barrels of oil, or your savings are denominated in copies of Action Comics #1 or in Amazing Fantasy 15 or in Florida real estate or whatever the thing is, that you'll notice that all the value of those things went up when compared to the value of the dollar or the euro or whatever else. It's one of those things where, like, you can't create new value just by creating new dollar bills. You create new value by building things, by going out there and spending money in a way that it comes back as more things, not as spending money in ways that are like, oh, these people blow the money and then they'll eat a bunch of food and they'll do things that consume more things. That does not actually create new stuff in the universe. It creates expenditure, but it doesn't create. It's not an investment. Investment is things where I spend X amount and I get X plus amount back from it. That's not what the government ever does, or at least very rarely what they do. Certainly not what they're doing these days. So we live in a world where the government, in a very short period of time, has created $10 trillion worth of debt, which is of new money, which is finding its way through the economy. You're seeing it as it finds its way into becoming monetized. You're seeing it, the value of money go down. You're seeing the value of everything that isn't money go up, that still is of use to people. And Bitcoin and things like Bitcoin represent almost a fleeing from that. One of the interesting features of Bitcoin and Ethereum and so forth is that there's a limit to how many Bitcoins there can ever be. So you can't simply, there is no central authority, there is no central governor of Bitcoin that gets to say, like, we'd like there to be lower price to Bitcoin, we'd like to be a little more affordable, so we're just going to decree that there are now X many more Bitcoins. It's an impossibility. The rules of the system prevent that from ever happening. So if you want to trade things for Bitcoins, you're trading for the same fractional pot. You can't increase the pot, of the denominated asset. You have to, you have to fight fair on them. So a lot of people who are sitting there looking at their real investments in things like dollars go south on them are sitting there thinking, they're looking at things like Ethereum or Bitcoin and saying, hey, might be the way to play right now. So that is definitely something that is fueling it, is a lot of concern for inflation. By the same token, I do think you also ought to be concerned that the same people who are busy inflating their own currency can very quickly pass rules that make it so that it's miserable to own Bitcoin. For instance, if you guys have looked at your tax statement, your tax preparation forms this last year, you'll see that you're actually required to disclose all your Bitcoin assets, but you also could impose currency trading regulation rules on Bitcoin, treating it not as an interesting thing that is of limited value like an Amazing Fantasy 15, but treating it like an actual currency, subject to all those kind of banking rules. If you did something like that, then suddenly the overhead for dealing with Bitcoin goes way up. And that could become very interesting. It could have an effect of causing people to flee that market. Other things about Bitcoin. Bitcoin was rumored to be anonymous. It is anything but. It is the least anonymous thing on the planet, because even though there was never a person I had to talk to in order to buy Bitcoin. You simply transfer money out of PayPal or out of some asset. You can do a bank transfer where else in order to fund your digital wallet to buy whatever cryptocurrency you want. And all those other cryptocurrencies never need to ask who you are again. The answer is because they know that you are the official owner of the currency, because your wallet, your digital wallet, is holding onto a long hexadecimal number, which tells you that you're really the guy who owns this thing. No one else has that private key, what they call it, in order to own this thing. So the good news is it can never be stolen from you. It can never, there's a number of other things that can never happen to it. But also, if someone knew your essentially identifier for that Bitcoin, you can trace every single thing that Bitcoin has ever been spent on through its entire history. So if you ever knew, Bitcoin got a reputation early on as like, yeah, that's the thing that like drug dealers use or arms dealers or things like that. The idea being that someone could anonymously buy the Bitcoin to start with, and then once it was there was no monitoring face-to-face of people to see who traded it to the next thing. It was all just done as a signed cipher from place to place. Well, that's true, except that, first of all, it's actually quite difficult to buy a Bitcoin anonymously these days. The closest you probably will ever come is if you went to a Bitcoin ATM, stuck dollar bills in it in the dark of night while wearing a funny disguise and a hood, funded a digital wallet with it. At that point, I guess you bought some Bitcoin semi-anonymously, but wait for that one to go away. No, for most things, Bitcoin is again the most tracked thing on the planet in terms of knowing who spent what with it. The only thing that's anonymous about is your name's not directly tied to it, but should someone under subpoena get given your name by whoever Coinbase was or whoever did your initial funding transaction, at that point they would know everything you ever spent that Bitcoin on. It'd be worse than your grocery list. So that's one interesting thing aspect about it. So Bitcoin is not, it's absolutely secure. As a matter of fact, it's so secure that should you ever lose your digital wallet, or should you have your keys stuck on, to your Bitcoin account stuck on some kind of like iron key hard drive or USB device, and somehow you lose access to it, or you run it through the wash or whatever else, that sucker's gone. Unless you've got some other backup of your own encryption keys on the whole thing. Yeah, you can destroy. There's some guy, I forget what the exact amount was, but he was offering to pay. He had somehow thrown out a hard drive that he realized later on had Bitcoin on it that was worth, then it had gone from next to nothing to being worth over $200 million. And he was offering, because he could locate from when his garbage was picked up, he could locate approximately the sector of the city dump it must be in, and he was offering to give them like $50 million if they would just let him, excavate out that section of the dump looking for his lost hard drive. There are any number of stories like this. If you do get in this space, don't let this happen to you. If you thought backups were important with your other stuff, oh my God, digital wallet, you have no freaking idea. That said, it is very secure. No one can steal it from you. It kind of can't be done. The blockchain architecture that's all built on is very secure. It's as secure as people know how to make anything in the digital world, really. And it's kind of ingenious how it all works. They power the entire works of verifying the blockchain transactions, which is a very considerable amount of computer crypto work to make sure that all these transactions are fully verified and fully tracked, and everyone agrees and no one can fake a node to try to put one over on the blockchain. All that stuff is done by essentially incenting the people to use the extra power of their graphic cards to verify transactions all day long. So by doing that, you get given as proof of work. Once you've turned in your proof of work, essentially as part of the mining process, is what they call it. You get paid off for the work in Bitcoin, some fraction of it. So that's why you guys, if you've ever tried to upgrade your graphic card in the last 5 years or so, why it's been damn near impossible, because everyone is using all the high performance graphic cards that the universe can create right now to process Bitcoin transactions in a way that is there to pay off and ideally earn them some Bitcoin themselves. It's a fascinating system. All right, going back to collectibles on this one though for a moment. You say somebody just spent $900,000 to get a digital pixel. Why in God's name would you do something like that? And the answer is because there are people who bought it and then resold it and made way the hell more. Let me see if I can get this one right here. I'm looking for it. I showed you the Daft Punk one a little earlier on, but I think it is. No, that's the comics. Darn, I'm gonna have to dig this one up again. There's a here. Let me look it up. There's a digital artist named Beeple, who has become a bit of a darling of creating NFTs for his artwork. Record NFT, and let me see if I can pull this up for you right now. Had this ready to go right before the show. Here we go. So yes, Beeple. Let's pull this up over here. Yes, spent $69 in record-breaking art sale. This Beeple guy. If you could see this, his art is nothing more than a collection of screenshots from the top of his site. He called it, it was bought by some guy calling himself Medicoven. Christie's sold this one. It was the first 5,000 days. This was the first virtual non-fungible token sold at a major auction house, $69 million. On one hand, this is insane. I can create digital tokens out of dang anything, including nothing but the top million screenshots off my site. Why would someone pay this much money? And the answer is because he could go and sell that same token later on for more money. I believe Beeple, what was it called? Infestation, popular culture. Let's see if this gets me where I want to go. 69. Beeple crashed it. Yeah, here we go. Here's the artwork in question. It's the central one over here. This same artist here sold this guy over in the middle. He did them as an edition of 4, so you didn't even get a unique one. It was like buying a limited number of prints, even though it's the same artwork. I mean, you and I could look at the same screenshot and getting exactly the same thing. He sold it for, good lord, let me see if I can get the numbers on it. He passed more than $1 million for that one. But I'm looking, it's this guy right here on ArtStation. Come on. Why is this so hard? There's the guy. Infected Culture. All right. So this guy here, well, that's the actual picture. Anyway, I had the auction up result earlier on, but it sold originally for, a couple $100,000, and then it got offered again. Somebody else sold another one for like $288,000, and then the guy who bought the first one wants to now post his NFT up for $1.2 million. And this is all done in a matter of months. It's absolutely insane. So you could say, is this the bigger sucker theory? Yeah, absolutely. on one hand, it is a rare asset. It is, again, it's a bragging right, but it is a unique bragging right. It can't be faked. Unlike all the collectibles that are up on eBay with sports signatures on it, which I forget, the FBI is estimating like 85-90% of them are fake signatures. No, this really is Beeple, whoever that guy is, who really did say, yeah, you've got the bragging rights. Way to go, you. So you really did get it. You didn't get the art. He did, however, nice guy, for the $90,000 I think the original sold for, gave it to you in an acrylic, gave you the thing as a GIF, looping in an acrylic binder. So it's basically you bought a little, like one of those little photo screens, along with a piece of his hair that he guaranteed was not from his pubic region. So thanks, appreciate that a lot. Anyway, so that's a thing, and people not only have bought it, but they're willing to buy sometimes the follow-up, the thing that you bought that was crazy, they're willing to pay even more for it. So let's just want to get a quick reaction to some of this stuff from the chat, because again, this is the sort of thing that makes your eyebrows go up more than once. Competent Man says, one of the objectives of Bitcoin is bring transaction costs near zero. That definitely was something that was on the original plan for Bitcoin. If you guys have ever changed money at like, who's the guys in the airport that, whenever you need, went to Europe and you need to change, dollars for pounds or euros or things like that, there's only be some guy who would charge you a 5% commission on the top of it to change X amount of money on the whole thing. It was always going to be really great if you could, avoid that, or avoid, like, whenever you buy, let's say you buy comic software, if you spend $129.95 for an upgrade to Archive Edition, we don't actually get $129.95 off that. We get that minus, $4 or $5 worth of transaction fees, which, our merchant processor charges us. So the idea being that if you were going to pay us in Bitcoin, which I guess that's a thing that could happen, could we make it so that of the $129 in Bitcoin that you gave us, that we actually saw 128 of it? If so, I might be interested. On the other hand, if the $128 in Bitcoin I got could go to $5 by the end of the day, or if it went up to $500 by the end of the day, I don't know how I run a business based on that. So that's a thing. Greg Hayes said, if quantum computing ever becomes a thing, hacking blockchain becomes a more relevant concern. Might. At some point we'll have to do another deeper dive on public key encryption. My guess is you could probably defeat almost any attempt like that just by increasing the length of the keys involved. Even if you had a computer that worked millions of times faster doing crypto work than current computers, it's a pretty easy thing to increase the size of the computing problem enough that it should still be uncrackable, would be my guess. All right, so let me see here. Steve said, question, do I want, back to a comic-based question, do we want all books sent to me? A bunch of prose books, sci-fi, fantasy for the most part. Honestly, I would say send us books that are of interest to you that you would like to see in there. I absolutely would like to see as much content out there. I'm very interested in seeing how the book and magazine section ComicBase, how it takes form over the years. I suspect the way it's going to wind up being is it's going to organically, just by people sending in the things that are in their own collections that are of interest, it's probably going to organically start resembling a pretty cool pop culture bookstore, without us doing anything in particular to guide it. There'll be some weirdo things for sure, but I think in much the same way that, like, if you like comics, you probably like a lot of other things that other people around you like. I have the feeling that your books probably, wedge in with the books that are loved by other comic people in the same way. So I don't think it's going to be entirely random. I think it's going to be strongly pop culture-y if we just have you send in whatever's of interest to you to see. If the stuff gets just really strange, here's a Flemish dictionary or something like that, yeah, then we might say, yeah, not right now. But for now, I'd be interested in just letting things roll. Lord of the Rings, absolutely. Why not? I mean, that sounds great. I myself put in some Heinlein books early on. All right. Let's see. Yes, and Steve says I haven't tried submitting my 1899 microbiology textbook. Yeah, I'm not saying no on that. That said, I did make sure that when you do submit books of that era, that we can handle dates that go way back, as in Gutenbergian levels of things. All right. All right. So, and I'm putting in things like Life, Sports Illustrated into magazines. How picky am I going to be? I'd like the magazines to be, in theory, collectible, which I think is a very broad category. I mean, I do think there are people who, it's funny because it's very hard for me, for instance, to imagine someone who's very interested in buying an old copy of Maximum PC. It's just really hard for me to see. Like, who would want that unless you're doing a very, very, particular bit of set dressing, because I can't think of anything that becomes less interesting and less nostalgic than an old high-end computer tech book. That said, would I pay money in theory to get a 1980 copy of Byte magazine? Yeah, I think I might, because it's really interesting to see what was the big hotness in 1980 as opposed to what's going on now. See the people who were marveling over the specs of the 4 megahertz computers that were on the horizon. So I don't know. Again, I think it's one of those things that let's let the trends play out and see what goes. At some point on the end, we'll probably trim it down a bit, but I think for now, I think we got some room to let it ride. And Jeff Smith has a Kickstarter going for his new project. Yeah, I want to follow up on that. I have a follow-up call scheduled later on for with one of the folks over at Kickstarter to talk about comics and publishing on the whole thing. I think there might be some news to share with that afterwards, but let's see how it goes. All right. Well, anyway, and so Gregory. Oh, sorry. This is Gregory. I'm reading in the middle of your 2 announcements. Number 1 of your 2 announcements, Jeff has Kickstarter going on. So Jeff Smith, good guy. Friend of the program. I absolutely, check out his stuff. I support him in pretty much everything he's done. He's just a good guy. And also, Comic TV, currency exchange rates with Travelex. That's the thing I was trying to think of. There's also a name. It's sort of an English-sounding guy's name. Some Smith. I'll think of it in the end. But that was Compliment. And Greg Johnson says, don't forget we have a dedicated thread on ComicBase where you can request live stream topics and demos. Excellent. All right. And gaming magazines. Excellent. Great to see those as well. And Mike says, I've got a bunch of 1970s and 80s Rolling Stone newsprint editions. They're a bit ragged. Absolutely still interested. I would love to see those in the database. And honestly, I was just in a pub the other day for like a game night, and I saw that someone in the pub had made a poster up on the wall of their top 100 Rolling Stone covers they'd done, and it was just neat to look at. So yeah, I think that'd be great. Greg says I have a stack of old Wine Advocate issues. I need to get them submitted up on the AA to see if there's any market out there for them. God, yeah, you and me to both. I mean, I really would be really interested to know. I don't know, but I don't know how you find out unless you do it. There's an old issue of Bass Player magazine that was transcribing a Rush doing New World Man that I still would like. Yeah, I would pay some money to get a hold of that thing just for that one article, and I don't know how I'm ever going to find that magazine. But it's interesting to think that we're actually making a market where there really has been I think it's been very fractious at best, or fragmentary. The magazine back issue market. I think we're in a position where we can really pull this together for magazines, and I'm curious to see how it goes. All right. Well, I think that's it for now, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Full disclosure. I did actually, jump into Ethereum this morning. Through a certain amount of investment income, which is just the stupid money. It's like the what the hell, throw $5 on the ponies kind of money. And I thought, screw it. If I want to, apparently, if I ever want to mint my own NFTs for, that picture of me on the whole thing, yes, you can do it. Just by adding it into the Ethereum blockchain. It costs, I want to see the price because you have to pay more or less the gas bill for what it would cost to print the new blockchain thing, and it winds up being about $100. At least it was the second I looked. So I wouldn't be doing it with just anything. So you might pay more to create the NFT token than you might ever make for it. But Who the hell knows? But I thought, it'd be good if I at least had if I had the currency which would allow me to follow through the entire process. So if Ethereum goes just crazy, skyward and everything else like that, remember, I'm the guy who told you this is insane, don't do it. Okay, so anyway, that is my statement against financial interests. So you guys take care, and I will see you all next time. Bye.